One morning, on his way out to tend the fields, Farmer John says to his wife Carol, "The insemination man's coming today to breed one of the cows. I've driven a nail into the rail above her stall so you can show him which one it is." Carol nods, and the farmer heads out. A bit later, the insemination man arrives and knocks on the door. Carol leads him down to the barn, walks past the stalls, and stops beneath the one with the nail above it. "This is the one," she says confidently. The man, a bit skeptical and amused, asks, "How did you know this was the right cow?" Carol replies proudly, "Easy. There's a nail above the stall." The man chuckles. "And what's the nail for?" Carol turns to walk away, shrugging casually over her shoulder. "I assume it's to hang your trousers on." A millionaire decides to take his brand new private plane out for a spin. It's a perfect day, blue skies, calm winds, until a sudden engine issue forces him to make an emergency landing on a small, remote island. As he steps out, he's greeted by a group of friendly monks who welcome him warmly and offer a tour of their beautiful monastery. Everything seems peaceful, but as they stroll through the grounds, he hears a strange, rhythmic banging sound echoing in the distance. "What's that noise?" he asks the head monk. The monk smiles. "I'm sorry, I can't tell you. You're not a monk." Curious but respectful, the millionaire continues the tour. They admire the lush gardens, enjoy the ocean breeze, and engage in deep conversations about life and spirituality. But then, bang, 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 he hears it again. "What is that sound?" he presses. The monk calmly replies, "I can't tell you. You're not a monk." Later, near the dining hall, the sound returns louder than before. This time he asks another monk. Same answer. "I'm sorry, you're not a monk." Now it's driving him crazy. He has to know. So he makes a decision. He's going to stay on the island and become a monk. Years pass. He trains daily, studies, meditates, fasts, chants. He dedicates his life to the path of the monk. Finally, on the day of his initiation, the head monk places a ceremonial robe on his shoulders and says, "You're ready." The millionaire now monk leans in. "Can I finally know what that sound is?" The head monk nods. "Follow me." They walk through the monastery to a massive wooden door. The banging is faint but present. The monk unlocks it. They step into a stone hallway. The sound grows louder. Door after door, hallway after hallway, each more ancient than the last. The sound builds. Bang, bang, bang. Finally, they arrive at a small brass hatch in the wall. The sound is deafening now. The head monk opens the hatch and pulls out an ornate box. He hands it to the new monk, who opens it slowly, his hands trembling, and inside, wouldn't you like to know? I can't tell you, you're not a monk. A blonde is on vacation when she suddenly runs out of money. No cash, no cards, and not even enough change to send a message home. Desperate, she walks into an internet cafe and pleads with the guy at the front desk. "Please," she says, "I'm broke and I really need to contact my mother. Is there any way I can send an email for free?" The guy leans forward, giving her a slow, unsettling smile. "Do you really need to contact your mother?" "Yes," she replies. "It's urgent." "And you'd do anything." She hesitates but nods. "Yes, I would do anything." He stares at her, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Follow me to the back room." Nervously, she follows him. He closes the door behind them, pulls down his trousers, and then his underwear. "Well," he says smugly, "go ahead." She sighs, kneels down, leans in close, and then cups her hands around her mouth and says softly, "Hi, Mom. Can you hear me now?" My granddad was feeling down lately. His prized marrows just weren't growing on his allotment. He looked so disheartened. I decided to visit and see if I could figure out what was going wrong. When I got there, he was slumped next to a sad, shriveled little marrow that looked like it had been cooked alive. I glanced around and noticed something odd. Every other allotment was bathed in soft, dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. But not his. His plot was in shadow, except for one blinding, focused beam of light roasting his vegetables like they owed it money. I traced it back and saw the culprit, a giant window on a shiny new shed on the neighboring allotment. It was reflecting sunlight straight onto his patch, like a magnifying glass on an ant. "How long has that been there?" I asked. "Oh, Harold's had an, When a lot many are next to mine since the war, he said. Yeah, but that shed looks new. When did he put that up? Oh, last year, I think. I nodded. Well, there's your answer, Granddad. He looked at the shed, he looked at the marrow, then back at the shed, and slowly a smile crept across his face. We've shed light on the problem, he chuckled. A German friend told me this one. A couple went to an exotic island for a vacation. They booked at a local hotel. Inside, there was a native waiter who seemed very eager but had a strong accent. Everything was fine until the couple went down for dinner. The girlfriend had dropped her fork. The waiter immediately saw this and asked them, Do you want to f***? The couple, although a bit disturbed, told him no. There were no more incidents until the couple went back to their room. There was no sheet on the bed, and the quick-eyed waiter saw this and asked them, Do you want a sheet? By now, the couple was not that welcoming of the waiter, as you would imagine, and hurried outside to enjoy the ocean. However, the waiter finally realized he had made some mistakes and followed them outside. On the beach, the couple had already changed into their swimming suits. The guy was sitting under a parasol, and the girl had just come out of the water and had bits of sand all over her body. The waiter spotted them and quickly ran toward them. The couple was not pleased to see him, but decided to forgive him after they heard him genuinely apologize for the things he said. Hoping to start a friendly conversation to strengthen their bonds, the waiter decided to comment about the sand on the beach. One evening, a man walked into a bar and approached the bartender, slapping a wad of cash down on the counter. 10 shots of whiskey, please, he said, his voice a mix of frustration and sorrow. The bartender raised an eyebrow. Rough day, huh? What's going on? The man sighed deeply. Well, today I found out my brother is gay, and he's marrying my best friend. The bartender nodded sympathetically but said nothing, just lined up the shots. The man drank them one after another, downing them quickly. The very next day, the man returned. Without a word, he walked up to the counter and ordered 12 shots. The bartender glanced over at him. I'm guessing there's more to the story. Eh, what happened now? The man stared into the distance, his face clouded with regret. I found out my son is gay. The bartender, still trying to keep things light, poured the shots, but curiosity got the best of him. Wow, that's tough. What's going on in your family? The following day, the man came back, this time ordering 15 shots of whiskey. The bartender looked at him, clearly concerned. Doesn't anyone in your family like women? The man paused, looked up at the bartender, and then with a wry smile said, Well, apparently my wife does. A man was sentenced to life in prison, and his first day on the cell block was filled with confusion. He sat alone in his cell trying to get his bearings when suddenly, from down the hall, he heard a loud shout, 27! Almost instantly, the entire block erupted in laughter. Surprised, the man looked around, but before he could ask what was going on, he heard another shout, 55! Again, laughter filled the block, and the newbie couldn't help but be even more puzzled. A few moments later, another prisoner shouted something else, 72! And once again, the whole block roared with laughter. Finally, the newcomer couldn't stand it any longer and turned to his cellmate. What's happening here? He asked. Why is everyone laughing? His cellmate looked at him with a knowing smile. Well, see, we've all been on this cell block for so long, some of us 20, 30 years, that we've told the same jokes over and over. After a while, we just gave them numbers. Saves us time. No need to tell the whole joke anymore. The man nodded slowly, finally understanding. That makes sense. Let me give it a try. Excited to be part of the joke, he stuck his head out of the bars and shouted, 13! There was a moment of silence, then crickets. He looked back at his cellmate, who was lying on his bunk, shaking his head. What happened? The newbie asked, confused. His cellmate shrugged and said, Some can tell him, some can't. There was this guy working the fryer at McDonald's. But he wasn't just any fry cook. He was a seasoned veteran, a former chef who could tell when something was perfectly cooked just by sight or smell. No timers, no thermometers, just instinct. His fries? Legendary. Golden, crisp, flawless. People didn't just come for burgers. They came for his fries. So, one busy afternoon, he drops a basket of frozen fries into the hot oil. No alarm set, just his trained eye and impeccable sense of timing. As the fries sizzle away, something shiny on the counter catches his attention. It's the latest Happy Meal toy, a talking battery-powered Pikachu, fresh out of the box. A lifelong Pokemon fan, he can't resist. He picks it up, curious. On the tail is a little pull tab labeled Haching. He pulls it. Pikachu! It squeaks. Grinning, he pulls it again. Pika Pika! Now he's hooked. He keeps pulling. Pika? Pikachu! Pika Pee! He's enchanted. 15 different phrases. He pulls that tail like he's trying to evolve it. Then, tap tap, he turns. His supervisor stands there, arms folded, holding a smoking, blackened basket of what used to be fries. The kitchen falls silent. The supervisor's voice is calm but stern. You may be experienced. You may have instincts, but no one is above the basics. There are tools in this kitchen for a reason. Timers, procedures, consistency. You've forgotten one of the oldest truths of the trade. The chef looks down in shame. The supervisor leans in. Do you know what that truth is? The chef says nothing. Tell me! The supervisor barks. The whole kitchen freezes, waiting for the answer. The chef lifts his head, eyes full of regret. Time flies when you're having fun. A blonde and a brunette decide to rob a bank. They spend weeks planning it. Blueprints, timing, disguises, everything. The day arrives. The brunette pulls up to the front of the bank in their stolen getaway car and turns to the blonde. All right, do you remember the plan? The blonde rolls her eyes. Yes, I remember. I'm not an idiot. Still, the brunette goes over it one more time just to be sure. 5 minutes, in and out. Got it? She says. Got it, says the blonde as she jumps out of the car. The brunette watches her disappear into the bank and waits. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then a bang. The alarm blares and the front doors burst open. Out comes the blonde, red-faced and gasping for breath, dragging an entire bank safe behind her on a rope like it's her new pet rock. Behind her, a security guard stumbles out, pants around his ankles, fumbling for his weapon like he's in some slow-motion action scene gone terribly wrong. The blonde struggles to hoist the safe into the car, fails miserably, drops it with a crash, and dives into the passenger seat. The brunette floors it. As the car speeds off, the guard yells, "Stop! Stop!" But the only thing that stops is the rope still tied to the safe, flapping helplessly in the wind behind them. The brunette turns to the blonde, furious. What the hell happened in there? The blonde, gasping for air, replies, What? I followed the plan exactly. The brunette's eyes go wide. You idiot! You were supposed to tie up the guard and blow the safe. A local business put a sign in their window. Help wanted, must be able to type. Must be good with computers, must be bilingual. We are an equal opportunity employer. A little while later, a dog trotted up to the building, read the sign, and walked inside. He wagged his tail at the receptionist, then padded over to the sign, looked at it, and gave a soft whine. The receptionist blinked. Wait here, she said, and fetched the office manager. The manager took one look at the dog and raised an eyebrow. Is this some kind of joke? But the dog just sat calmly, staring at him with quiet determination. Amused, the manager said, All right, let's see what you've got. The dog jumped up on a chair. The sign says you need to be able to type, the manager said, folding his arms. Without missing a beat, the dog hopped down, trotted over to the typewriter, and typed out a flawless letter. No typos, perfect grammar, better than half the staff. He took the paper, handed it to the stunned manager, and returned to his seat. Impressive, the manager admitted. But the sign also says, you must be good with computers. The dog padded over to the computer, opened up a spreadsheet, ran a macro, cross-referenced a database, and even fixed a printer jam. The manager was now completely floored. Okay, he said slowly, you're clearly capable, but I still can't hire you. The dog tilted his head, confused. The sign says you have to be bilingual, the manager said. The dog looked him dead in the eye and said, Meow. Ansette. A recently retired man bought himself a quiet home near a high school, looking forward to some peace and relaxation. For the first few weeks, life was bliss. Then, the school year started. Every afternoon like clockwork, 3 rowdy teenage boys came marching down his street, banging on every garbage bin with sticks like they were leading a one-man band parade. Clang, clang, clang. The noise echoed through the neighborhood, day after day, clang, clang, clang. Until finally, the old man decided to fight fire with finance. The next day, he waited for them on his front lawn with a smile. "Hey, boys," he said. "I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Pure fun. Tell you what, I'll give each of you $1 if you keep doing this every day." The boys, thrilled at getting paid to cause chaos, eagerly agreed. Every day they returned. Clang, clang, clang. And every day they got paid. A week later, the man came out with a more serious tone. "Fellas, the economy's rough. I can only afford 50C each now." The boys grumbled, but cash was cash. They kept banging. A few days after that, the man greeted them again. "Bad news, boys. My pension's delayed. I can only swing 25C per day from now on." The ringleader scowled. 25 cents? Are you kidding me? That's not even worth the walk. He tossed his stick to the ground. "This sucks. We quit." And from that day forward, the neighborhood was silent. The old man sat back in his recliner, smiled, and enjoyed the rest of his retirement in blissful, bin-free peace. A woman decides to surprise her husband with a brand new luxury wardrobe. While he's at work, she heads to IKEA, picks out a beautiful wardrobe, and brings it home. She follows the instructions carefully, assembles it, and is pleased with the results. But then, as she's admiring her handiwork, a bus rumbles past the window, and the entire wardrobe collapses. Stunned, she rebuilds it, following the instructions to the letter. It looks perfect, but a few minutes later, another bus passes by. And once again, the wardrobe falls apart. Frustrated and confused, she calls customer support, explaining that the wardrobe keeps falling apart every time a bus drives by. The customer service rep assures her they'll send over someone to help, specifically the carpenter who designed the wardrobe. The carpenter arrives, watches her assemble the wardrobe once more, and sees the exact same thing happen when the next bus passes. He's baffled, but determined. He helps her rebuild it and gets inside the wardrobe himself, trying to figure out what's going wrong. Just as they finish, the woman's husband bursts through the door, furious. "Why did the neighbors text me saying a strange man was in our house for hours?" he demands, storming through the rooms. He bursts open the wardrobe door to find the carpenter inside, looking sheepish. "What on earth are you doing in here?" the husband shouts. The carpenter, caught in the act, looks up, flustered, and says, "Would you believe me if I said I'm waiting for the bus?" The teacher asked her young class to bring in a family story with a moral at the end and to share it the next day. The next day, Joe went first. "My dad's a farmer, and we have chickens. One day, we were driving to market with a basket full of eggs on the front seat. We hit a big bump, and the basket fell off the seat. Every egg broke. The moral of the story is, don't put all your eggs in one basket." "Very good," said the teacher. Next was Mary. "We're farmers, too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but only 10 of them turned into chicks. The moral is, don't count your chickens before they hatch." "Excellent," said the teacher, impressed. Then it was Dave's turn. "My dad told me a story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer during the war. Her plane got hit, and she had to bail out over enemy territory. All she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete." "Go on," said the teacher, intrigued. "Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to calm her nerves. She landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete until the blade broke. Finally, she killed the last 10 with her bare hands." The teacher, horrified, gasped, "Good heavens! Well, what did your father say was the moral of that story?" Dave paused, then grinned and said, "Stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking." A zoo recently acquired a female gorilla as their new star attraction. However, she quickly became aggressive and difficult to manage. After examining her, the zoo's veterinarian determined that the problem was she was in heat. The problem? There was no male gorilla at the zoo to calm her down. After some consideration, the zoo administrators noticed David, a keeper responsible for cleaning the animal cages. David was a big man, 6'6", and had a reputation for being able to handle any woman. even though he wasn't exactly known for his intelligence. The administrators came up with a plan and approached David with an unusual proposition. Would he be willing to, help the female gorilla for 500 bucks? David thought it over and said, I might be interested, but I've got a few conditions. The administrators, eager to resolve the issue, asked him to name his terms. David nodded and said, First, I don't want to have to kiss her. The administrators quickly agreed. Second, I don't want anything to do with any offspring that might come from this. David added. Again, they agreed. And the third condition? They asked, curious. David grinned and said, You've got to give me another week to come up with the 500 bucks. One night, I hooked up with this blind woman I met at a coffee shop. We went back to her place, and after a bit of fun, we were lying there catching our breath. Out of nowhere, she turns to me, smiles, and says, You have the biggest I've ever seen. Turned out she was just pulling my leg. A wealthy old man spots an attractive woman at the grocery store and approaches her with an unusual proposition. Ma'am, you are absolutely beautiful, and I'd love to give you $1,000, he says. The woman, surprised and flattered, replies, That's very generous of you, but what would I have to do? The old man smiles and says, Just follow me home. Take off all your clothes, pick the money up off the floor, then you can get dressed and leave. The woman thinks for a moment, then says, Wow, that sounds great, but I'll have to check with my husband first. She calls her husband, explains the offer, and asks him what he thinks. The husband replies, Yeah, babe, we could really use the money. Just pick it up quickly, get dressed, and come home. So the woman agrees, goes back to the old man, and follows him to his house. She undresses and starts picking up the $1,000 off the floor. An hour later, her husband calls her cell phone, asking, What's taking so long? Out of breath, the woman responds, That dirty old man paid me in quarters, dimes, and nickels. A lawyer goes shooting and brings down a magnificent pheasant that lands in Farmer Joe's field. Knowing the law, the lawyer heads over to the farmhouse and knocks on the door. Farmer Joe opens up and the lawyer speaks. Excuse me, sir. I'm a lawyer on a shoot, and I've just brought down a splendid pheasant in your field. Since I'm a lawyer, I attended a prestigious law school, and I'm a partner in a large corporate firm. I know that I'm required to ask for the landowner's permission to retrieve any game. Farmer Joe glances past him at the pheasant. Well, it is a nice one, Farmer Joe says. Tell you what, we can settle this with a game of Rochambeau. Winner keeps the bird. The lawyer, taken aback, asks, Rochambeau? I'm afraid I've never encountered that in all my years of law school. What are the rules? Farmer Joe shrugs. We take turns kicking each other in the balls. Whoever gives up first loses. The lawyer is uneasy, but really wants that pheasant. All right, fine. Who goes first? Well, since it's my land, I kick first, Farmer Joe says with a grin. The lawyer reluctantly agrees, standing in the doorway with his legs apart, bracing himself. Farmer Joe steps back, runs toward him, and boots him square in the crotch with full force. The lawyer's lifted off the ground, crumpling into a heap, sobbing and cursing for a solid minute. Eventually, he gathers himself, tears in his eyes, and shakily stands up. Well, he says, straightening himself, my turn. Farmer Joe looks at him, shrugs, and says, Now you can keep the pheasant. He slams the door in the lawyer's face. Farmer Joe decided that his injuries from an accident were serious enough to take the trucking company responsible to court. In court, the trucking company's fancy lawyer began questioning Farmer Joe. Didn't you say at the scene of the accident, I'm fine? Asked the lawyer. Farmer Joe replied, Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had just loaded my favorite donkey, Bessie, into the... I didn't ask for any details, the lawyer interrupted. Just answer the question. Did you or did you not say at the scene of the accident, I'm fine? Farmer Joe said, Well, I'd just gotten Bessie into the trailer and I was driving down the road when the lawyer interrupted again. Judge, I'm trying to establish the fact that at the scene of the accident, this man told the police officer that he was fine. Now, weeks later, he's trying to sue my client. I believe he's a fraud. Please instruct him to simply answer the question. By this point, the judge, now curious, told the lawyer, I'd like to hear what he has to say. Farmer Joe thanked the judge and began his story. Well, as I was saying, I had just loaded Bessie into the trailer and I was driving her down the motorway when this huge semi-truck ran a stop sign and smacked my truck right in the side. I was thrown into one ditch, and Bessie was thrown into the other. I was hurting pretty badly, and I didn't want to move. But I could hear old Bessie moaning and groaning. I could tell she was in terrible shape just by the sound of her groans. Shortly after the accident, a policeman arrived on the scene. He heard Bessie moaning, so he went over to her. After looking at her, he pulled out his gun and shot her right between the eyes. Then the officer walked back across the road, gun still in hand, and looked at me. He said, "Your donkey was in such bad shape, I had to shoot her. How are you feeling?" A man is sprawled across 3 entire seats at a posh theater, and the show hasn't even started yet. An usher walks by and notices him. "Sir, you're only allowed 1 seat. Can you please sit up?" she asks. The man groans but doesn't move. The usher, getting impatient, says, "Sir, if you don't get up, I'll have to get my manager." The man groans again, and the usher storms off to find the manager. A few moments later, the usher and the manager return, and together they try repeatedly to move the man, but with no success. Finally, the manager calls the police. A few minutes later, a police officer arrives and approaches the man. "All right, buddy, what's your name?" "Sam," the man moans. "And where are you from, Sam?" With pain in his voice, Sam replies, "The balcony." A burglar was sneaking into a museum, carefully making his way through the halls. As he crept past the security guard, he noticed the man sitting at his desk, his head in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. "I can't believe I've worked here for 10 years, and no one has remembered my birthday again. Longer hours, more work, and no appreciation," the guard wailed. The burglar stood frozen for a moment, his plans completely derailed. Instead of sneaking past the guard, he felt a pang of sympathy. Determined to make things right, he marched straight to the museum curator's office and kicked the door open. Inside, the curator, the head of HR, and the head of security were sitting in a meeting. "How did you get past the guard?" the curator demanded. The burglar, calm and collected, looked at them and said, "Gentlemen, I'm afraid you've really let your guard down." Tom wasn't the brightest kid in school. In fact, most of his classmates thought he was a few crayons short of a full box. He struggled with the simplest things, and his teacher constantly sighed, "Tom, you're driving me crazy." One day, Tom's mother came to school for a meeting. The teacher didn't hold back. "Ma'am," she said, "your son is absolutely hopeless. His grades are the worst I've ever seen, and he can't even complete the most basic tasks." Devastated, Tom's mother pulled him out of school and moved to another city. 25 years later, fate had other plans. The very same teacher had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. The doctors agreed. He needed emergency surgery, and there was only one man in the city skilled enough to do it. The operation was a success. As the teacher slowly opened his eyes, a handsome young surgeon stood smiling at him. It was Tom. The teacher, overcome with emotion, tried to speak, but suddenly began gasping, his face turning purple. He reached out, trembling, but it was too late. He was gone. The surgeon turned around, only to see Tom standing there, holding the plug of the respirator in one hand and his vacuum cleaner in the other. After a grueling 3-month voyage, Mac the sailor finally docked in New York. He was tired, broke, and in desperate need of some company. Unfortunately, most of his pay had vanished in poker games on board, and all he had left was 50 cents and a pair of sneakers. He wandered the streets, propositioning every working girl he saw. One after another turned him down, some with a laugh, others with a slap. Eventually, one kindly woman took pity on him and said, "Look, love, I can't help you, but try Mabel down the road. Times are hard, and she might just go for your offer. But don't expect too much. Mabel's not exactly lively. She just lies there." So off Mac went. Sure enough, Mabel agreed, though reluctantly, to the 50 cents and the sneakers. "Fair warning," she said deadpan. "Don't expect much. I won't be moving." But halfway through the act, Mac suddenly felt an arm curl around his back. Then a leg wrapped around him too. Surprised and impressed, he grinned and whispered, "I knew you'd come around to my charms." To which Mabel replied, "Don't flatter yourself, love. I'm just trying on the sneakers." A sea captain took his crew on a long voyage across distant waters. After a few weeks at sea, the sailors started getting a bit restless. To keep order and morale up, the captain devised a solution. He brought out a large barrel with a hole in the side and announced, "Right, lads, this here barrel's your new companion. Use it whenever you need relief. And if you lot fill it up by journey's end, I'll throw in a bonus. Well, peace returned to the ship. The sailors were content, and the barrel did its duty. When the voyage ended, the captain found himself with a very full barrel and thought, waste not, want not. So he sold it to a local candle maker. A few months later, the captain came back from another voyage with a new full barrel and approached the same candle maker. But this time, the candle maker threw up his hands. No way! I'm not buying another one of those barrels. Why not? Asked the captain. The wax was good, wasn't it? Oh, it was excellent, said the candle maker. Best candles I ever made. Then what's the problem? Well, he said, pointing up the hill, see that convent? It's full of pregnant nuns.